Hello, horror fans. It's me, Cass,
Kylie.
and we are with Weston. How are you?
Good, amazing as always. Happy to be here.
We are super excited. So, for those of you who do not know Weston's face or his voice, he goes by the handle Just Haunter, as you could see down in his description and below. But he has incredible content on all your social media platforms. He's definitely helped me learn more about horror gaming. There are some horror games that I have explained to people afterwards that I'm like, I don't know what I witnessed. I think there was one in particular I was telling Kylie about that was like a trampoline park one that you were going through and like things kept popping up and it was like a horror. And I'm just like, I feel like this should be a movie.
Yeah.
But definitely helped step up my horror game. My mom credit even for Braden. So because I know some like current releases and keep up with my child. So we are very appreciative for all of your content. But today we're not talking about something that is very child appropriate. We are talking, yeah, we are not. We are talking about the underrated gem that is Session 9. This is a heavy movie. It's got a lot of layers to it. When Weston first came on, he had mentioned that Session 9 and The Changeling were some of his favorite movies, and immediately we could cue back to that scene. But my eyes just went like, "Are we related? Do I have a brother out there that I don't know about?" Because those are very cast coded selections. So as soon as he said that, I'm like, he has to come on and do a deep dive.
There are movies that a lot of people don't mention. But they're like, what's that? It's not like any of the big movies. So I don't
No,
know if it makes me like edgier or not, just because I always mention like movies that a lot of people I just like movies that a lot of people haven't seen.
yeah,
So
I feel like that's something we have in common, and it's crazy because the Changeling is kind of one of Kylie's and I's first suggestions to people when they're talking about like beginner horror, because the Changeling isn't a very violent movie, but it's a
Yeah.
very deep movie when you're talking about the like when a lot of things that we preach is obviously horror movies have such deeper meanings, and a lot of deeper meanings than I think people give them credit for. The Changeling is kind of proof of that because there are so many different layers. It's kind of
mhm.
like this movie where you can watch it once, but by like the time that you get to like the ninth or 10th time, you're still uncovering layers to this movie that you haven't really seen before. And I feel like that's kind of the hallmark of a good movie. So
Yeah, it mixes paranormal. It mixes. I mean, if you're a fan of true crime, it's
Yeah.
awesome with true crime. But that's also why Session 9 is also one of my favorite movies because, like I said, I've watched it like 9 or 10 times. And this last time, I was like, oh, I didn't notice half of this or this before. You always catch little things. There's so much going on with these movies. So those are
yeah,
the kind of films I like.
yeah,
Layers.
I love movies that blend true crime and horror and with the razzle dazzle of paranormal. It's just,
but respectfully,
Mhm.
because I think that's a big thing too, is
yeah.
there are a very short list of movies that I think blend true crime and a lot of that with still respectfully tackling themes, because like one of the things that we're going to talk about coming up here in the future is we're going to tackle a very big true crime, big like news type thing, and that is The Sacrament. And part of that is, I think the reason I think a lot of people love that movie, and I will give Eli Roth his flowers when he deserves it, he really didn't sensationalize a ton of that. It was kind of, he changed a lot of elements that he needed to, obviously, because it's a fictionalized account, but he kind of just let the horror of what happened be the horror. And I
Yeah.
think that that is so important sometimes, because it is obviously you need something that is going to make people fascinated and click into the movie. But I think you can do that in a way where you're not taking away the power of the movie. And that's why I kind of think in this one, particularly too, with session 9, there is a lot of elements that kind of add to that where you're not really taking away from what happened to these people. Like, it is horrible, it is ugly, it is kind of reality that is just deeply set in and that is unnerving, but it's never in a way that makes you feel like these people are being exploited for this movie or anything like that. It's just kind of very powerfully sat where it needs to sit. So I really like that when they hit it right, because I mean, let's face it, crime happens every day. And so I think this is a good example. So I'm super excited to get into this, super excited to dive into the meat and potatoes like we normally do. Before that, though, Weston is constantly pumping us up on the internet about how we are a safe place for women in horror, which we really appreciate him doing. But he has never got a chance to see our intro. So that is why we are now having him in the intro with us so he can see this. So if you have heard this, but we're going to go ahead and say it again. To Tiki, we deeply appreciate you making this. He put a bunch of ideas that we had together, but this is the Horrorcraft intro, and we are about to cue the music and get into it. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Horrorcraft Podcast.
And we are back. So
You just find new ways to reinvent yourself, don't you? Because last time you were on, you showed me some cool stuff, and then this one, awesome, always.
Yeah. We, you know, the thing I loved about it, and Tanner Tiki is also going to be doing Spooky Moms, but he kind of just said, hey, give me a couple ideas of what you want, and I'm just going to throw, and we kind of had to educate him on feminine rage, and which he loves. He's been going through that genre. He said it's become one of his favorite, but my requirement was you have to put the Hex Girls in. You have to. That's an absolute must. Like, that is a representation of women in horror. And Kylie, obviously, we had to put a little bit of Scream in there for her. And really kind of, but yeah, he just threw a bunch of things together, and we were like, you cooked on that one, friend. You cooked. So, but yeah, the intro is amazing. We love it. So thank you, Tanner. But yeah.
Very well done.
Yes, it's a banger. So getting into horror, though, we're talking about session 9. So if you have not seen session 9, you want to see it. It is not currently, if I could speak, it is not currently I'm sorry. It is not currently streaming on any streaming services. Weston is holding it currently.
I got tired of renting the movie because I love it so much, so I bought my own.
I feel that. So, but it is currently available for rent and purchase on most streaming platforms like Vudu or Amazon. It regularly goes on sale. And so I would highly suggest buying it and watching it. It is definitely well worth the money. If by the time we release this episode, it is streaming anywhere for free, we will put it in the description down below. But if you want to watch this beforehand, please stop, come back to us. But going forward, we have a massive spoiler alert in effect. And especially because normally we try to stay away from certain details of giving away a movie, but it is quite literally impossible with this movie to not give something away. So as of right now, the spoiler alert is in effect, and you are entering at your own risk. So we will be talking about session session 9. So, but to kind of synopsize session 9 is about a group of individuals that are kind of dealing with life stresses, decide to undercut themselves to beat the competition and put a bid in for a cleanup job that is next to near impossible to complete. But they do successfully win the bid. And it just so happens to be at your local, insane asylum. And we kind of see the week unfold to some pretty dramatic circumstances that end pretty grisly and kind of just very open-ended about where things could kind of go moving forward. It is definitely one where you, through watching this movie, you kind of formulate your own thoughts and opinions about each character, but also too about the ending. Because I know that for a lot of people, this ending is very open-ended and people feel one way or another. So
It's got one of the best final sequences in the movie.
Yeah, it really. This is one of those movies you can never unwatch. The first time you watch it and the ending hits, you can never get back to that feeling. You can never get back to that feeling of what the fuck just happened. Like
I get the chills, honestly. Every time with the ending, when Simon's talking at the end, I get chills every time. It's great.
Yeah, I feel like for us too, particularly, this movie takes on a certain kind of different lens too, because I feel like this also has a really deep conversation about mental health in general, but also mental health with men. But then it also talks about different themes with women as well, that I think a lot of people don't pick up on. That very much kind of needs to be explored. So go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, it's a very male centric film that really pushes like social stresses of fatherhood, being the provider of a family. Because a lot of the horror movies pushes like, the stresses of motherhood, rightfully so, because I feel like it's so intimate, specifically being a mother and things like that. But you don't really talk about how complicated it can be being a father, pushing fatherhood, the stresses of being a provider. You got to be stoic, masculine, and just being able to hold it down for the family and how much stressful that can be.
Yeah, no, truly, it really does, because throughout the whole movie, we know that Gordon clearly is going through a lot more than he is letting on. But there are very different conversations that are going on in the movie about his mental state, because there are some people that are picking up on the fact that he's possibly unraveling a little bit, and there are other people that are like, no, he's a calm, he's very calm, cool, collected, he's very go with the flow. And it's very jarring when we as the audience know that this man is falling the fuck apart.
So this movie came out in 2001, right? It talks a lot about like, hey, putting a lot of pressure on yourself work-wise. I feel like nowadays it's more prevalent than ever. People are working multiple jobs. People are having to be the highest bidder and do the least, do the more amount of work, getting paid the least. And that's kind of what this movie pushes, just all the stressors. Like Gordon is a new father, and halfway through the movie, they're talking about how he's like, he didn't want to be a father. And he's like, no, he loves being a father. They're thinking he has all the control in the world, when in the reality, by the end of the movie, even before the movie starts, things definitely turn very dark. And I think maybe we're jumping, at least me, I might be jumping ahead, but that's why I love Gordon as a character so much, because saying he did some horrible things, I'm not justifying it, but it's very sympathetic how you feel toward him by the end of the movie. And I think that's what makes the movie work so well.
I mean, truly, it is though, because the big reality of it is when you get to the end and he realizes a lot of it for himself as well, you don't know whether or not it is the paranormal side of things that have taken over for him or it is psychosis. But it is very clearly that once he is awake, that he has to deal with the ramifications of what he did, regardless of whether he was in one state or another. And you do truly see that this is a person that very clearly is not okay with those things happening. And he has to deal with the weight of, oh my God, I did that. I did that. I don't know why. And it's very, we're jarred in that moment with him because we're kind of like, whoa, like you weren't aware of it the whole time. So what the hell was happening?
Well, and I think a lot of common themes we see in movies, and whether or not you believe in the paranormal, like in real life, like a lot of these darker kind of entities and spirits will kind of attach more to people who are going through things or having mental health issues or just dealing with a lot of stress, things like that. So I think it might have been really a combination of both, being a new father and the spirits of that place.
Well,
Why Simon works so well as a character, as like a
yes.
backdrop of because it's what is it an actual entity that goes over people that are weak right now, or is it just a manifestation of trauma?
Yeah.
I mean, and really it could be both because let's face it, when they're going through and doing the initial bid, they're telling him, like, the person that's showing them is telling them like, oh yeah, this is where like this kind of lobotomy was perfected.
Yeah.
And oh, this is, and whether or not there is a paranormal component to it, being in an environment where you know people came here to get help and then had these things happen to them is not a great backdrop for somebody that is also silently experiencing, deeper things going on. And so it's just so well layered and so just done perfectly where it does kind of lead it to your own interpretation, which I think is probably the thing that makes this movie as impactful, because where you're at personally in life is kind of what shades you into this is what's going on. So I love it. I think as we all do. But it kind of dives into one thing that I really wanted to talk about, which is with the themes of mental health and psychological trauma. How do you interpret the film's portrayal of these issues, and how do you feel like they influence the story? Because we kind of did talk about that, but I'd be interested to hear both of your perspective. So I don't know who wants to go first.
You go ahead.
It was, I mean, I feel like we've all, I mean, obviously we haven't gone out. I would like to think a majority of your listeners and the majority of us don't go out and start killing, people. But I mean, we've all been in that situation where we've hit like a stressor point where it's just, you just crack. Like you get angry, say like my cat moving into this place and knocking stuff over all the time. Got mad, yelled at him, didn't do it, you know what I mean? But you get to that point where sometimes you just get really angry and you're like, man, I can't believe I reacted like that, Everybody's had that. So, I mean, this movie takes it to the extreme, adding on all the stressors in Gordon's life. He's a new father. He's got to run a business. He wouldn't have, his business would have shut down if he wouldn't have gotten this bid. And he said, we'll finish an entire place within a week. By the way, I think it's Danview State Hospital is a real, they used an actual haunted asylum, which was cool. And like Brad Anderson was real respectful. I think they said it took like a month, 22 days or whatever to actually film the whole thing. And they had all kinds of stories of just like at least being really respectful to the place, you know, and it's like residual energies that it kind of possibly could have. But at the end of the day, it's just like going back to the point, like he's got all these massive stressors, and he's like the guy that's everybody's supposed to look to hold it down, and he just cracks. We've all kind of been there. It's really almost relatable in a sense.
Yeah, I found it to be incredibly relatable, especially like with Gordon and his wife just having a baby, because, you know, I just had another baby. How old is he? 4 months? Yeah, almost 5 months. And that was an extremely stressful time. And I know it can be extremely stressful on my husband, Dakota. Like trying to like balance like being the provider and trying to make sure like I'm mentally okay or like I'm getting breaks and things like that, and trying to provide financially while also trying to like make sure like he has time to do things like himself. um it can be very, very heavy, but I don't think Gordon's issues, I don't think he's the only one that's really like having issues. I think really all of them kind of
They
are.
all are.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have, oh, I don't remember his name. Hold on 1 second. He's the guy who
Frank
plays in
is the head classes.
NCIS. Is it Frank? No,
Yeah.
Phil.
Oh,
You have
no.
Phil, who's having to work with Josh Lucas's character Hank, and like Hank is like shacked up and sleeping with like his ex love of his life, having to deal with that. Hank's worried about just trying to come up financially. And then you got this kid who's Gordon's nephew, who's just, you know, he's a kid. He's a kid pretty much. And then you've got Mike, who like kind of flunked out of law school. Like he's wanting to go back to that. He hates that he's back, you know, doing asbestos cleanup. I think it was all just kind of like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it really was. And I do think that that's good perspective, Kylie, that you put in there, because going back to, you know, your husband, Dakota, and kind of talking about Jim too, for you just having a baby, you also have a child that's on the spectrum, and you have a child that is typical as well. And that is a lot of challenges. It's kind of layered like Gordon is. And I can relate to that, because obviously then I have Jim, and Jim has his own, you know, health issues as well. But then he's raising a child that is not biologically his, but is his, and has an issue and has to deal with those challenges, but then also, you know, has to kind of walk along aside me while I do. And I think that we don't have a conversation about that, especially even nowadays. You know, this is a movie that came out in 2001, and we're talking here now in 2025. And this is not a conversation that I feel like does get brought up a lot, about the pressures that not only motherhood can have, but fatherhood as well. And especially when you're just trying to do your best and you have all of these stresses, how one thing can break all of that that's holding everything back and lead to, I'm not saying that somebody's going to go out and be homicidal, obviously, but I'm just saying,
condoning homicide here.
Yeah, we're not, full disclaimer, we're not condoning homicide, obviously, but you could understand how somebody would be under so much pressure that then all of this would lead to the recipe for disaster that then goes and moves forward, because this is also a job that is very dangerous to begin with.
Yeah, it's another thing too. Very dangerous.
Very, very dangerous. It has a lot of concern. Like one wrong move can cost somebody their life. They're wading through asbestos and different things like that. And it is just a lot of so many different layers when you then put in the fact that there could be something going on in the actual building, and the conversation that does get had about the psychological practices that, you know, kind of happened previously. It doesn't, you know, whether you believe that it's paranormal or not, obviously this is not a good setting for the whole group that's not having good mental health issues, when you're talking about people who quite literally got tortured trying to seek mental health help, and then they're now having to go clean up, the ramifications from that. So I do think that there is definitely a deeper conversation about how mental health should be looked on both sides, and how you could understandably see how this would then make somebody susceptible to then losing their shit. Pretty much.
I think
Doesn't
we're
asbestos
very
kind
close.
of like drive you crazy too?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of gases and stuff there, like, because you don't know what you're dealing with when you're there.
Yeah,
You're
because
seeing things, and that's what's fun about the movie is like, is it the asbestos? Is there an entity? Is it a demon in somebody's mind? Is it just there's so many layers with this movie, and you can watch it from so many different lenses, and it's worth a couple watches, more than one, because you'll find something new every time.
Yeah, because I mean, like, let's be honest, Gordon had that's what he's done all of his life, is worked in asbestos cleanup. What if that was one factor in the driving force of him turning just homicidal on everybody?
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because you notice, like, I mean, they keep harping back. There's a specific scene where he sees his wife outside the house, and then they focus in on the boiling pot of water. But you notice before he even gets in there, he's got flowers, he's got groceries, he's bringing in champagne to basically like celebrate. Hey, I got this new job. We're not going to have to close everything down. I got everything under control. And then it takes one wrong move of her accidentally pouring the boiling hot water on him, to where he's just like, all the stressors in his life that he already has, he just snaps. And that's why halfway through the movie, he's just kind of sitting there like, he's asleep.
Yeah.
That's why at the end, it's like, you have to wake up. And he finally notices what he's done. And it's like, oh shit, coming to grips with what you actually did.
I think what it also is such a deeper layer to this movie, and I do agree, especially with what you said, Weston, about the representation of the boiling pot, especially when they keep going back to it and stuff like that, and how that is kind of a representation of like one wrong move and it can make you just snap. And I think they do a lot. Okay, this is a spicy take. I feel like they do a lot better job of it, talking about what could make a person snap versus something as iconic as The Shining. Because let's face it, and I love this, and please don't come for me. I'm going to hold everyone's hand when I say this. We're not going to sit here and act like Jack Nicholson's character was the greatest father to begin with going into The Shining. And it really did amplify just his natural kind of douchebagness underneath. Am I saying that he was like naturally going to kill his family? No. Obviously, there's a conversation about that going on in that movie. But he's not necessarily a great guy. Gordon is more sympathetic because this is a guy that's kind of just stuck in his circumstances. His wife and him have been trying for a really long time. And anyone who's ever struggled with infertility and issues having children can understand all the stress that brings, especially financially. They do at one point, I think it's Phil that brings it up. They're like, oh, well, he should be happy. They finally have a baby and stuff. And they're kind of talking about him in a very negative way, like, oh, he should be happy that he got everything he wanted. Oh, he just did it to like kind of shut her up. Like they have that kind of whole conversation.
No,
And
yeah, I didn't believe that. He truly loved his wife. He loved his wife. I mean, kind of what Weston was talking about, like right before he walks into the house, like he has flowers or champagne. He's wanting to celebrate this big bid. He doesn't have to close the business. And just the way he talks about her after, not even realizing what he did yet. He loved his wife. So that's why there definitely there was more into him snapping on her over the boiling pot of water than just him just snapping.
But that's what makes the session tapes that like Mike ends up
Yes.
finding and listening to. That's what kind of makes Simon, that character, so powerful, because again, Simon could be a mixture of two different things: the manifestation of trauma and mental illness, and a supernatural entity that takes over people who are mentally weak, right?
Yeah.
And the last final scene of the film where he's like, "Where are you, Simon? Where do you live?" And he's like, "I live in the weak and the wounded." So it almost like adheres to like, hey, there's an entity out there that just kind of like, whatever you're thinking of deep down, especially with your stressors, I can bring that out of you. I can do that. And it's not in your face. It's not for sure that's what's going on, but it's kind of fun to kind of kick around like, okay, was he mentally ill? Was it the asbestos? Or
Yeah.
was there possibly a demon that kind of goes after weak-minded individuals?
Yeah, truly.
Well, and I think
Good
like
mixture of
with
elements.
the mental illness, like multiple personality disorder, you know, and this is not really scientific fact, but there are a lot of horrific things that happen for people who have that disorder, and they do horrific things. And while I'm a very logical person, I think there is the question, were some of these people possessed by certain entities like Simon? Because I don't believe, especially in this woman's case who had the multiple personality disorder, that this was multiple personality disorder.
So Simon, at least for me, and this is just kind of what I kind of was thinking about, specifically when I watched it again this time, I was like, oh my God. Simon represents like the deepest trauma and violent tendencies in people, and kind of the ultimate psychic defense mechanism, like really only surfacing when a person is pushed way beyond their limits. I kind of was like sitting there and just be like, people who have multiple personality disorders, Simon is that just like ultimate defense mechanism, because you don't see him throughout the whole movie. You kind of get glimpses here and there. And then like when that voice, like especially the voice, whoever does the voice of that is so creepy, because you can tell the girl with the multiple personality disorders, she's got a little girl called the princess, which is more like what I forgot, just kind of like innocence. And then Billy, which lives in the eyes, which is like, the doctor's like, I know you saw what happened. We need to let Mary know. And then Simon shows up and it's just like, what's up, doc? Like, all cool. It's freaky. It's very cold.
Yeah, there are definitely movies like My Soul to Take and Identity that kind of toe that line between, is this what's going on, and is this really kind of, and I think they do that in such a good way. But I do think this does have a conversation, because part of this that we kind of have to think about when thinking about this, the asylum closed down in 1985. Admittedly, up to that point, from probably about like 1910 to that time, mental health practices were not great. And the treatments for what they thought were multiple personality disorders or different things like that were not actual treatment. They were pretty much, let's chalk it up to what it is. It was torture. And there were a lot of people that got misdiagnosed with multiple personality disorders. There's a lot of people that didn't get the help that they need because they didn't have the science then, and they thought that these particular things,
like, what they call certain things or mental illnesses that required hospitalization in these asylums, and their recommended form of treatment was lobotomies. Like, me and you would have been in there.
Yeah. I mean,
it's very experimental.
Really crazy.
Yeah. Well, and like they even go through when they find like the logs and stuff, they're saying like these people were admitted for like this and that, and they're like, what the hell does that mean? And like I think it was like generalized disposition or something like that. And there were a lot of things, because there was a period of time where people were like, okay, well, our son or our daughter are a little kooky, we're just going to put them in this place and they're going to be secured there and it'll be fine. So, there is that conversation. I do think the best part about this is already a movie that is amped up by the surrounding, by the characters, by all of that. The audio is the thing that kind of really pushes this movie over the edge, because having that audio play in specific chunks of time in the movie, that really is what plays up the fear factor and really plays up like what is going on, because you're listening to these tapes of this person where they're trying to get to the bottom of what happened at a particular incident. And there are the different voices and the different, but it is very like jarring when you're hearing this as they're all kind of going through the day-to-day minutia of getting this place cleaned up. And it does make you look, at least me personally, makes me look at it at a deeper lens, because the audio, even when you're listening as a listener, the audio is such a huge part of that. Like that is what I noticed the most watching it this time around, is how insane that audio is, when like they perfectly timed that and put it in play. And they were very specific about having the tone, and like Weston said, whoever does the voices, I'm just telling you, that was incredible, impeccable.
It's very Shining-esque. If
Yes.
people love The Shining or even like The Shining, they'll love this, because there's so many I'm not even saying they ripped The Shining at all. They made it completely their own thing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of similarities between not just going crazy, but like the audio. And not one scene is wasted. It's kind of like in The Shining. Every scene has a meaning. Even if you don't think there's a meaning, every single scene in this movie has something to do with pushing a narrative.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big part, because as much as I just ripped Jack Nicholson for The Shining of not being a very likable dad, when you come back to The Shining through Dr. Sleep and you see Danny kind of looking through things as an adult, as how his dad acted when he was a kid, you do kind of see the same things brought up, is that his dad was just trying to do the best he could. And he snapped, he went mad. And Danny, as an adult, has to deal with the ramifications of all of that happened. And that's what kind of plays into his circumstances in Dr. Sleep. But you do kind of see that, how that is similar with, The Shining and Session 9, but they are two very deeply, like, they're in the same ballpark, but they have their own meanings. And I think that's what makes them good. But I think what's good about Session 9 is it lets you kind of figure out for yourself, like, was it the place? Was it the person? Was it the people? Because let's face it too, this does have a conversation, I feel like, about the company you keep, because some of the people in this movie, they're not friends. They claim they're friends, but they're not friends.
They're not friends.
They're
It's a
really
giant melting pot of everything. Perfect
Yeah.
storm.
Very, very truly, because it's just like, for me watching this, and I just had a thought while thinking about it, obviously, because again, Kylie just had a baby, and all the troubles that I know she's gone through doing that and stuff like that. I'm thinking to myself, if you know that your friend just went through all of this and is struggling and having a hard time, Phil is not a good, like, supposed best friend and business partner. He's kind of, I understand he has to, like, look out for the business and stuff like that, but he is just not, like, for someone who admittedly then down the line in this movie talks about, like, he hasn't been right for a while and stuff like that. It's like, okay, if this is supposed to be your friend though, and there's literally pictures of him, Gordon and Phil together, you see that, on his like wall at home and everything like that, you would think that this would be the kind of person that would be like, hey friend, I see you drowning over here, let me throw you a life raft and let's figure this out together. But he kind of just has no sympathy, and it does expose kind of the deepest parts of their friendship in this, because
Yeah, well, I thought like Hank was like the shitty friend because he's screwing Phil's ex-girl, whatever. Really, it's Phil.
yeah,
He was he's the worst possible friend you can have. The one to smile in your face and then do some grimy stuff behind your back. At least Hank's up front with his shittiness. Like I can respect that, but Phil, no.
See, I feel
Not
like
at all.
Phil is trying to hold everything together without saying, hey, you, because by the end of the movie, he's kind of like, hey, this is way too much. He's got to go home. He's going to crack. He's just not being that friend that's going up to him saying, you got to go. You can't stop. See, I think Phil really is kind of out. This is just me. I know you guys have difference of opinion. I think Phil, I guess it's just like different when you have like guy friends, because the guy friend is not going to be vulnerable with you and be like, hey, listen, I can tell you're having a rough time. Plus, obviously, they'd be losing another person on the job and they really want to get that bonus. So the whole thing is like, hey, we can all come together and get this going. But by the end of it, they notice, hey, things are going off. He's not himself. You know, Phil's trying to hold it together without being like, you need to get the fuck out, basically.
I appreciate that perspective, because obviously we're not guys. And I do think with women a little bit, we do have like we expect a little bit deeper when it comes into certain time. Not saying that men do or don't.
Like I was talking to you the other day about, like, I have a lot of people, family and friends in my life who really like kind of aren't like checking up on me at all. Like, just kind of certain people are just kind of dumping their shit on me and just like not even asking, are you okay? How are you doing? Nothing like that, except for Cass, really. And but
we love Cass. Let's go.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, no, I get, but Weston, to your point, like, I do understand, obviously, male friendships too can go deeper and stuff like that. But I do feel like there is kind of, Kylie and I are looking at this, obviously, as the perspective too of how we friendship people. And I just know for me personally, like, especially the moment that got me is when Gordon tells him, I hit my wife. And I understand why he goes and does it, but his first base instinct was to pull the other person aside and be like, hey, he has to take a break. He has to do this now. Like, things like that. That would not have been my first base instinct. My first base instinct in that conversation would have been, hey, listen, right now you are getting in that car, you are going home, and I am going to figure this out. I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, but I'm going to figure this out, because at this point you have told me, a person that is normally not violent, that something like that happened. I need you to go get help. I'm going to be more concerned at that point in time that that person is getting what they need and what their family needs than the job.
And this is why I kind of like this movie as like a male-centric push on stressors, because let's put it, times are changing and there's always but back then, especially 2001, earlier, how old some of these actors are and things, it's a male-centric field. They're not going to be very vulnerable. You know, him sitting there and being vulnerable with, I'm assuming, his best friend, because they've been working together for a long time. Hey, I hit my wife. Like, why did I did this? I did this horrible thing, right? Coming to, and his friends just kind of like, you know, suck it up. We'll push through this week. We need to get that $10,000 whatever, like, bonus. and then we'll worry on like everything else after. That's how, growing up as a male, it's always like that. Get what you need to get done first, and then worry about your feelings and emotions second. I'm just saying that's kind of how it is. Things are changing obviously now, but it's just, that's kind of how it is being a guy sometimes, especially like when I was growing up, it was a lot of like, hey, just suck it up. If you're feeling bad, you won't feel bad forever. But that's also what pushes. That's why this movie is almost timeless in a sense, because all the issues all these issues are even more prominent nowadays. Stressors, everybody's working more and getting paid less right now. It's impossible to find a house and things like that. Almost nobody's having a family because of the stressors and needing. And I can imagine, or somebody being in that type of, situation where it's like, man, I have to provide for my family. All these other people, I have to provide for my family. That we're going to get a nice payday out of this. So Phil's almost like sitting there like, okay, I have to think of what's good for me right now, but also like, how can I help my friend here? And that's why I think it's so powerful when he pulls his son and says like, hey, we got to get him off this job. Yeah. Because he just didn't say it to his face. He was kind of just saying, hey, not to try and embarrass him or make him feel less of a man. Quote.
Yeah, no. And I do, but see, I do think that that's an important conversation that this movie does have, because exactly like you're talking about, Kylie has 3 boys. I have a son. Like, we are raising men into this world, and we are trying so hard to deconstruct that thought, you know what I mean? Because of the fact that you see how that thought process, that kind of push on that, is not good. Like, that is kind of that is kind of the conversation that I have with people about like different toxic masculinity traits. Is it's not good. It's certainly not good for women, but like, it's definitely not good for men either. And it's definitely not good for boys to grow into that, because then my son, who's 12, is growing into that mentality that is then going to become a man. And I'm not going to continue to push that forward, because I don't want him to ever feel like he has to push through that and he can't be human and stop himself and end up in a situation where he does have a snap because he feels all this pressure. I feel like there, for Kylie and I both, like, it's the whole thought process of like, definitely the generational trauma side of like making sure.
Like, I mean, Weston probably doesn't know this, but Cass, like, like my dad took his life 8 years ago, something like that. Mental health and chronic pain. And with the mental health component and his trauma and chronic pain, it was just like a recipe for disaster. So I feel like with my boys, you are allowed to cry, you are allowed to, except the whining. I'm sorry. Like, yes, but you know how Julian can whine. I want them to be able to talk and name their feelings and not let pride and fear and what everyone, especially society, says that a man is supposed to be, because things like that happen. Like, the rate of men taking their lives is a lot higher than women, and it's because they suffer in silence.
It very truly is, which is why down below, if you are ever feeling like lost or hopeless, please use the resources that we are going to put linked down below. We are ones that are big advocates for talking about this specifically for that reason, because you do never want to make a decision in the moment that will truly affect your life in that way. So we are big proponents about being like, listen, you might see us out here on the internet, but we're 2 moms from the Midwest. And so if you ever feel alone, you can DM us, because I'm telling you, I'm the kind of person, I will be in the trenches with you. I will be that person for you. I will fight for you. but I want you to be alive. I want your mental health is never worth any cost that high. So please, if you feel that way, use the resources down below and feel free to reach out to Kylie and I, because we are big proponents about not being alone. But I do think that this does have a very important conversation about mental health from a male perspective, and how that affects it, because we then see obviously what Gordon does to his wife. And somebody could, seeing that on a base level, could say, oh, well, that was just him naturally. Oh, he was just eventually that was going to come out, but it's not. It's not. It's a deep reflection of where he's at. I truly don't believe, when going through this movie, that Gordon was predisposed to being an abuser, or that him and his wife had a very negative relationship that was like brought to the surface.
Well, what's dark about it, not only does he do that to his wife, he does that to the dog, and he does it to his kid. So it's like, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, if you're stressed, anytime I mention something, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, people are going to go out hurting people, but this person had, I guess, so much, a mountain amount of stress on him, and it just snapped.
And it happens because, you know, on the
that's what makes it so real about the movie.
Yeah, it really is, because for those of you who want to sit there and say that it doesn't, from both the male and female side of it, Kylie and I can tell you, this is something that is rampant in the special needs community.
I just read an old news clipping article or something. I don't remember what it was. I don't know what state it was from. Just something that came across my Facebook. Actually, I meant to send it to you, but it was just a short clipping. It was in like 1947 of this woman. This detective apprehended this woman because she beat her baby with a hammer because of the strain of motherhood. And while that is wrong, it's something as a woman, and especially in motherhood, that you recognize, because it's not easy. It is not easy.
No, and as much as we talk about motherhood side of it, the fatherhood side of it is important too, because like I was saying, especially for us, our kids have so many issues that we are fighting up against the world. And I think we both intimately know stories of people who have had to make difficult choices, especially mental health wise. And there are so many different things that have happened. I know, you know, when Braden first got diagnosed, I was part of a Facebook group where this woman, she was having a very dark time. And it then was found out later that she tried to drive her car into a lake with both of her special needs kids in it. And it was due to the stress. And it is one of those things where that should never be an option. But you also, when you are being stressed on that level of having to deal with life, you can't stop your brain sometimes for doing something that dark. And I think that's what this is saying.
And the stress, stress is real. We're not talking about saying that the actions aren't necessarily real, but everybody feels stressed one way or another. And that's what's so real about the movie. And it's that sometimes you get so I mean, burnout is probably the best example of that. I feel like everybody experiences burnout. You're kind of just at the end of the week or even before the week, and you're like, man, I got to get through this entire week. What am I going to do? You start feeling anxious. You start feeling your mind starts racing in 100 million different directions. It's just, some people just snap under that pressure. It's a natural thing, happens almost to everybody.
Well, and this is a high pressured situation because they are very different personalities that are coming together to try to do this job. And
that's what makes it so real, I feel, because it's not like other horror movies where there's like a trope. This person's this person's that. All these characters feel like natural people you would know.
Yeah.
So I think before we go into kind of some of the trivia that I have about this movie, I feel like I have to ask this. The ending. obviously happens the way that it does, do we think, each one of us can go, I'll go last, do we think it was the stress that got to Gordon, the mental health side of things, or was there an entity in the asylum? Kylie, if you want to go first.
I can't say it was one thing or the other. I think that the combination of stress, the combination of the residual spirits and paranormal that were in that asylum, and I think the long-term thing of working around asbestos, I think it all played a part. Is what I mean. I think it all did.
What about you, Weston?
It's so rough because, like, literally, I was looking at Kelly's face. I was like, because that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
Simon is both like a literal voice. So Mary Hobbs is the girl in the tapes.
Yeah.
I feel like Simon's both almost like a literal voice from the past and like a symbolic force that claims Gordon and kind of like takes over him. I think Simon literally is a representation of stress, whether stress is a demonic entity or not. Like I said, whether he's some demon or like the embodiment of like violence that you've buried or trauma, Simon just awakens when people are broken, and Simon is stress. I just think that they're two in the same.
Yeah, so I agree with both of you. This is my take though, and I think that this is probably maybe something that people have not thought about when it comes to this movie. Gordon was the most susceptible because of what he had going on. But let's face it, in this whole situation, this was always going to end this way because of everything that happened the way that it did with them going through and the tensions flaring and everything. If it wasn't Gordon that ended up snapping and killing everybody, I think it would have been Phil. Or it would have, I think it would have been, I think you had all these strong personalities. I think the moment that they decided to take this job where they were putting themselves in this environment where they all had the leveling of stress that they did, and that they were all kind of, I think from the moment that all of this was set up, something bad was going to happen. Now, am I saying that it was going to happen the way that it does in the end of this? Maybe, maybe not. But I always feel like this situation was going to come to a violent end because of the stress that was put on all of them. So I do think whether, like Weston said, that Simon is an entity of stress or an entity or whatever, this was always going to end this way because this is a very high pressured situation. They're already putting themselves on a very tight deadline. They're putting themselves in a very just hard situation, very dangerous with all the asbestos and everything. And then the differing personalities and how harsh some of those were. Like, I'm not saying that maybe if Hank was the one that did it, that he would have went through and killed all of them like Gordon did, but somebody would have got hurt in the end. And I think that is just the foredrawn conclusion.
So session 9, like the horror in it, it doesn't spell anything out. It's basically horror through ambiguity, right? But well, I mean, for sure, one thing is clear throughout the whole movie. Gordon didn't just go mad. Mm-hmm. Like something inside of him almost was wanting this to happen. This was waiting for it to come in. And that something was Simon, whether Simon's stress or a demonic entity. He at the end of the day, he's like, I'm tired, snap, and just.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's representative of all of them, because I think they all kind of had a Simon inside of them because of the situations that so it one way or another, it would have came out, you know what I mean? Because I think they're all kind of wrestling with their own Simon in this particular, and it's just the fact that Gordon was kind of the one dealing with the most, and that is what kind of reached in through the void and got him.
Yeah, you nailed it. They have a Simon in all of them, kind of.
Yeah, pretty, yeah, fair assessment. So getting into it, as Weston said, this is an actual asylum that they filmed on. This actually was one that the director went past quite frequently, and is what inspired him to use this as a setting. They were very respectful, as Weston also said. But getting into some of the trivia of it, only 3 rooms were additionally added outside of the natural setting for the atmosphere. The kitchen had meat hooks hung, the tunnel had plastic surgical gloves hung up, and the hydrotherapy room had a metal tub added. Almost everything else related to the asylum setting was found on site, as the crew scored the building for the set dressing to keep things authentic. The filmmakers even reported finding old patient tissue and blood samples on the premises, which they did not film out of fear. That's a little creepy, not gonna lie.
Yeah, they were very much like, before they even got in there, like, I think a couple of actors even mentioned, like, I've worked in other places, I've worked on other movies, I've never been worked. I mean, the asylum itself is a character in the film.
Yeah, true. I mean, it truly is. And like for Kylie and I, there are a lot of like abandoned places like that in Ohio specifically too. There are a lot of like different places that are creepy like that. Like I'm about to go to Incarceration in July, but like that's at Mansfield Reformatory, and they already that is already a weird place to be at. That's where, anyone who watched Green Mile, that is the prison that is featured there. I know also too, because my child came home from camp last year and told me all about the farm that he went and visited in Mansfield while he was at camp, and how it was prominently featured in Green Mile, and that he wanted to watch Green Mile. And I was a little like, whoa, yeah, we're going to have to wait on that. But there are a lot of places like that, and there is an eerie feeling when you go to certain places like that, when you're in environments that have had that kind of like history.
Yeah, I think some people that are completely turned off that there is anything paranormal, I think it's very ignorant to think that there isn't, especially in places like this where horrific things happen to people, and not just a couple people, hundreds of people.
Well, because go ahead, Weston.
Oh, I was just saying it. Things like that there's nothing in those buildings, right?
Yeah,
But they feel very claustrophobic.
they do.
Like the wall. I mean, especially when you're in a place that has such negative residual energy towards it. Everything, while it's so open, there's no buildings, there's no furniture, there's no nothing. It feels so claustrophobic. It's that's why it's hard. A lot of people have a hard time breathing in places like that because it just feels so tight.
Yeah. So the audio, the fictional Patricia Willard scandal that they end up talking about at Danvers State Hospital, it's cited by Mike at the film's beginning, strongly appears to have been inspired by a real life wave of problematic Satanism, and sex abuse allegations that swept the United States in the 1980s, including one involving the Amaralt family in nearby Malden, Massachusetts. There was a reporter, Dorothy Rabinowitz, won a Pulitzer Prize for her book chronicling the bizarre case, which is where they took inspiration from that from. Again, Brad Anderson was inspired to use Danvers Mental Hospital as he drove past it every day. The film unit only ever used a very small percentage of the building, as most of it was off limits, as it was unsafe. I mean, you can kind of see that in the film, even in the portions that they are in, because there were some portions where I was like, oh, don't walk. Do not walk there. Like, as a mom now watching this, I will say there were times where I was like, don't do that. You're going to fall through the floor. Like, be careful. Yeah, don't do it.
For how big of a setting they used, they really only used like maybe, a very handful of like areas, which was kind of cool in itself because you have such a big area to use. But really, I mean, we really only got to see, especially in the asylum, maybe 5 rooms, 6 rooms.
Yeah, truly. So
Which
Danvers,
was impressive.
Yeah, it was very impressive. So Danvers State Hospital was built in 1874 on a 257-foot high glacial drumming named Hawthorne Hill. The hill got its name from its original owner, which was Judge John Hawthorne. He was appointed to be a judge in the Salem witch trials. So that is a little interesting. A large subplot was ultimately cut involving a homeless woman who lived and lurked among the building and workers. The filmmakers deleted this because test viewings found her to confuse viewers who thought she was Mary Hobbs.
And it also I honestly like that too, that they took her out, because it almost gave a reason for things, where what's good about this movie is almost the ambiguity of it. The whole like, oh, what's going, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I do see where they were kind of starting to go with that in the beginning when they were talking about, oh yeah, homeless and different people still come back there. I'm glad they did leave that out, because your mind almost does want to try to find a reason to reckon with this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they left that out, because then it just kind of lets everything set where it's set. It really is kind of choose your own adventure. So
it very much streamlines the story too.
Yeah.
So you're not adding too much. I mean, there's already so much kind of going on with this movie. It's each character having their own personalities, their own struggles. Is Mary Hobbs around? Is there a demon? Is it asbestos? There's just so many layers. Adding another one on top just kind of, it's like overkill at that point.
Yeah. It is. So Danvers, Massachusetts, the location of the hospital and filming, was originally known as Salem's Village, which was one of the locations for the Salem witch trials, which makes sense then why that was built on the land that obviously was owned by a judge. Mary Hobbs' paperwork actually states she was 14 years old in 1951 when the incident happened, and it was 1974 when she was committed and interviewed, so Mary would have been 37. So that is very crazy. Some of the imagery in Brookhaven Hospital and the Konami game Silent Hill 3 was inspired by this movie. If you didn't know that. So I did not know that, but that is pretty cool. I'm trying to look, because there's a lot. The building is apartments now. Only 2 of the wings were saved along with the main building. So they are apartments now, which is very interesting. Brad Anderson. Huh?
The asylum's apartments now?
Huh? Apparently they have I don't know if they've modernized it or if they've like been able to tear down parts of it, but now only part of it is remaining, and there are apartments on that land, which is a little creepy.
Nope.
Yeah. So originally, Brad Anderson was going to use a spinning camera motif through the whole movie. He decided against that. Kind of glad he did, because I feel like that would have not worked out as well.
Mhm.
So obviously, at one point of the film, Mike calls Jeff princess, to which he immediately says, "Fuck up, I'm not your princess, dude." Princess is one of the personalities of Mary Hobbs, which I hope people like understand that. There is a very interesting person that is a fan of this movie. I don't think either one of you are going to guess it. So
Is
do
it
you
like
want to?
actually somebody famous?
So it is somebody that wrote a book of a very beloved cult classic movie that is not a horror movie, but is a movie that involves Brad Pitt, and people are quote it a lot, and it is a favorite of a lot of people.
It's not Chuck Palumbo, is it? Or Chuck?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fan favorite of Fight Club author Chuck Palahniuk. I think that's how you say
Yeah,
it.
not sure. I know I've read
So,
one of his books.
yeah, but it is a fan favorite of this. 1 year after this movie was premiered, CSI, where Paul Guilfoyle played Captain Jim Brass, premiered. Oddly enough, to the next year, Dave Caruso incorporated to the franchise, playing Lieutenant Kane in CSI in Miami. So they both joined different branches
CSI
of
Miami.
yes.
From NCIS, yeah.
Yeah. So the only CGI in the film is the lobotomy tool, which is pulled out of Josh Lucas's eye. Lucas raised his head to signify the tool being extracted from his skull. So
And I'm so glad I'm a big Larry Fessenden fan. If you don't know, he's the guy that they bring in at the very end of the movie. He's supposed to be the help. If you haven't seen The Habit, that's an amazing vampire-esque movie. But he's in so many like horror films, like little cameos here and there. And he's such a fantastic, phenomenal actor and filmmaker. I don't know why I didn't notice that he was in this movie before, but like this time I was like, oh, shit, it's Larry Fessenden. I love him. He's great.
There is a lot of, so for those of you who are listening to this and have seen some of our past episodes, the man in the beginning that takes them through the building is actually from In Dreams. He plays the detective in Dreams, and that was very interesting to then see him pop up in here for 2 seconds.
It was.
Yeah, it's I think Paul Guilfoyle is his name. But he is a great, I love him. So it was very hidden, like you see him here in this. So, but there's a lot of like good people that are in this movie. Before
I love Josh Lucas, but I'm biased.
Yeah, Josh Lucas was very interesting in this movie too. It was very like just like, because obviously Josh Lucas then goes on and does a bunch of like, Sweet Home Alabama and like different movies like that. So it was very interesting.
He's kind of good at playing an asshole, but because he was kind of an asshole in Sweet Home Alabama too.
I mean,
he was in Trevor Project too, right?
He was fucking incredible for that. Listen, we're not going to get into that argument because that's one of my favorite movies, and I know people don't like it, but I fucking love that movie. I thought he was great in it, and also too, it does make you realize why they ended up picking him to play a young Kevin Costner as young John Dutton in Yellowstone. Yep, he is.
It makes perfect sense why they picked him as a young John Dutton.
Yeah, you do kind of see shades of that in this movie with his character as well, having a very John Dutton-esque approach to things in this
I
movie.
mean, but I don't think John Dutton would be sleeping with his friend's wife, ex. I mean,
did we watch the same Yellowstone? Because probably.
I mean, yes and no. It depends. It depends on who, and if there was some form of like being able to come up from doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
Or to
But
sing Yellowstone.
yeah, I mean truly, but this movie is a very underrated banger. It is a cult classic. It is a gem. It's a movie that a lot of people then reference in other, especially horror directors. They say that this is one of their favorites. It's definitely a good case study in how to be an effective film without giving everything away. So definitely please go and watch it. It's incredible. We absolutely love it. So before we get moving on to our last segment, which is what is on our mind in horror this week, please go to the description down below. We are going to link Weston's everything there. Weston is constantly on TikTok, but he does a lot on Twitch. And if you are looking for someone to good game content, like I said, he definitely kind of has helped steered me in some directions. I'm trying to get a little bit more into horror gaming, even though I just have my little Switch that I'm like playing Animal Crossing on most of the time, but I am trying to venture more into other games as well. So, but if you're just looking for a good time, please go see him on Twitch. It's always a cool time, cool environment. And Weston is hilarious sometimes when he is getting, when he's in the moment of like, damn this game. Like he really tries. I remember one time I was in there and it was a game what was the game that was like sound? Like they could hear you and so you couldn't make noise.
Like classrooms.
Yes. That game was a very interesting one to watch because people were not trying to be quiet and Weston was just trying to make it out alive.
Yeah, my community tends to like sabotage a lot when I'm not on
Rude.
I notice people on Twitch are definitely like, we're gonna make him suffer, where TikTok everybody's like, cool,
But please definitely go show him some love. But Kylie, what is on your mind in horror this week?
Can I bring it up again? What I brought up last week? Because it's
Sure.
real life horror.
Sure.
The Diddy trial.
I mean, truly though, it is.
Listen, it sounds like something from a horror movie. It really does. And how this man has not been charged with torture, I will never understand. And just how certain things about him, how ritualistic he was about certain things, it reminds me of a straight up horror movie.
It truly is. And I will say, as a woman, it is incredibly empowering to see all of the different women sticking together and sticking up for each other. I will say Cassie's, I think it's mother-in-law, posted something about her and support of her. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh, and then I opened it and it's just a very beautiful picture. And she was like, I'm so proud that this is the woman that is raising my two granddaughters. And just like very simplistic post, but like honestly, I don't know what it was about it, but it just made me cry. Because it is like, and there are a lot of people that are kind of banding together, and it is a hard thing to do. This has been a hard week for certain things like that, with that and the whole Tory Lanez, Megan Thee Stallion thing, and then Halle Bailey with her. It has not been a good week for women of, believe us, believe the situation. There has been a lot of discourse with it. So the one thing I will say is the overwhelming part of the people who do like pitch in, and men, women, the support around this, it has been very humbling and inspiring to see, especially as someone who has been through a situation like that. I know how isolating that can be. So I am just very grateful that there is enough voices in the void with them as well,
Yeah.
that is protecting this situation. So we will definitely see how it transpires, and I do hope that there is some level of justice coming from this situation. So I guess we will.
That's just what I've thought about all week. It's just, it sounds like it's something from a horror movie. If this man was not incredibly powerful and incredibly rich, he would have not gotten away with this shit for as long as he did. I mean, he might as well be up there with like Bundy, BTK.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely a stark reminder that no matter how much we push the needle forward, that these are still things that happen every day. And it is something that we still need to be cognizantly aware of, and that we need to keep fighting and protecting the people around us. So I do hope that in the wake of this, that there is some kind of push for legislation, whether it be on a federal or local, state level, that will continue to provide protections for vulnerable parties. Because I do think that is a big.
You know, when you're a kid, you're scared about the monsters under your bed and in your closet, but really the monsters are people.
Yeah.
Truly.
And that is a stark reminder of it. So I really do hope that this does make people think, okay, we need to protect people, especially in such an industry as music that has given so many things to people. I'm a big music person, which is actually part of my thing for this week in horror, which is not a thing in horror this week, but I knew Weston was coming on, so I had to say something about it coming up. But
I think I know what it's about, and if it's who I think it is, it's horror-esque, and
it is. So, you know, it's been a little over a week since Sleep Token dropped, even in Arcadia. And what it just like has been ravaging, everybody on the internet, and their reactions. I know Weston is one of the few people around me that does listen to Sleep Token, and appreciates it. So Weston, have you listened to the new album?
I did.
Do you have a favorite?
No, it's kind of funny. All the songs really do like kind of blend together. Like it's a really solid album all the way through, to be honest with you. I don't really have a favorite.
It's a no skip. I will say that this is just purely satirical, so I hope nobody takes it this way. But if you all wanted a baby boom, you should have just let Sleep Token drop the album earlier, because I'm pretty sure that the song Provider is going to at least be responsible for a wave of children appearing in 9 months, because of how good that song is. But I do agree. If you go online, some of the things that are being said about it is just crazy.
I think Damocles is probably my favorite song out of all of them.
Well, so for me, the thing I love about this album is I do feel like it is you have some deep songs. Obviously, you have like your songs like Provider and different things, songs you would expect for Sleep Token, but then you get Damocles and like Caramel and different songs that kind of just like, even though they're good songs, they hit deeper. And it is kind of about like kind of tying back in, obviously, with us talking about session 9, is about the pressures that we feel, even on a level of fandom, kind of like Sleep Token has gotten to. It's about the pressures of feeling that and cracking And I think Caramel, until the album came out, was one of my favorites, just because of the fact of, like, you know, him kind of being like, this is what I get for wanting to be up on this level, but all I want to do is be this person that just expresses themselves in this way. Can't you just take it at this level? And I love that. So
my only knock with the album, because I mean, I like heavier sounding stuff.
it
It's a
isn't as
little lighter compared to their
Yeah.
other albums.
Yeah,
So don't come at me. I'm not saying I hate Sleep Token.
Well,
I'm
I
gonna get a
will.
ton of comments on my
I see.
TikTok.
I'm
like,
not a
you a
huge
hater.
Sleep Token person either.
Sleep Token is great. I will say, I feel like that is probably what is feeding into the rumors that they're gonna drop another album in a couple weeks. There's like they posted something up on their site. The battle continues, and there's talk of a double album. This being a double album, and there's another side of the album that is coming that is more heavier and more true to what they are. But I have no idea. I'm not one to keep up with it, because, to be honest, that is a whole level of Jumanji decoding that I would frankly fail at and do not want to get done. I just appreciate it for what it is. I actually got to buy the album Tuesday before it dropped, because my exchange had it early, and I was that fan that felt like, this is illegal. I don't know if I should be able to be touching this before Friday, but I'm going to take the bag and I'm going to walk away. I'm going to listen to my CD, and I'm going to keep my mouth shut until Friday. And that's what I did. I was like, hands up in the air, like, yeah, I'm not doing this. I'm not telling anybody. We're good. So, but I did enjoy it. But I do see what you're saying about it being a little bit lighter. So, nobody come for Weston. Please don't. You would have to come for all of us, okay? So, but I did just have to ask that, because I don't have very many people in my life that listen to Sleep Token. Other than Kylie will listen to it somewhat for me. Especially if I leave. Yeah.
It's not really my sleep. I was a fan of him. Him was before Sleep Token.
Yeah.
I saw the tattoo there, and I was going to mention something. I was like, that's badass.
Love
him.
So, but yeah, so that is, but my thing this week in horror, it's kind of a disappointment. Hold on one second. I apologize. My child just decided to come in and, just say he loved me. Which is always, we're just going to pause and go forward with it. But my thing in horror this week is kind of a horror disappointment. The Bondsman got canceled.
Oh yeah.
And I'm really sad about that. I like Kevin Bacon, and one of my favorite TV shows has Kevin Bacon in it, which was The Following on Fox. If you had never watched that, it was a show about a cult, and it was really great. But The Bondsman, I really just kind of started getting into. So I'm sad that they canceled it. And I'll have to, now it's going to make me not want to finish it, as, dive into it as much.
It. Like, Dakota said something about wanting to watch it, and no, we're not going there.
I feel like it should have just given its time, but it's fine. So if you want something in the alternative, I highly recommend you go watch The Following with Kevin Bacon. It's about him being an FBI agent, and dealing with a cult, and his ex-wife happens to be part of the cult. So it's a really good show. I loved it and enjoyed it. I also highly recommend anyone looking for a good horror TV show. Obviously, we're going to preach that into the fucking void till the day we die. Shout out to Jamie. But also to Hannibal. Hannibal was fucking fantastic, and that got canceled way too soon. So it's just sad, because I do think it's one that could have had potential, but streaming is what it is nowadays. So it kind of ebbs and flows. So I can't say anything about Sinners yet, because I have not seen it, but
So good.
I know.
It's I mean, everybody keeps saying it's like this movie solved world hunger or something and brought world peace, and I'm like, yes, it did. It's that good. No, really, it's incredible. I love Southern set pieces. I love the South. I love the food. I like, and it's got a mix of vampire stuff in it. So everything about that movie is just incredible. It's definitely the best film I've seen this year. And I actually like it more than The Substance, which I remember last time I was on, I was like, you need to watch The Substance.
I did watch The Substance.
I like it better than The Substance.
Yeah, I did finally watch The Substance. And it was everything I wanted it to be, but I feel like that's why it took me a while to watch it, because it is one of those movies that you have to kind of particularly like sit there and watch it and digest it. And for me, I just, at that point in time, I was like, I cannot commit. But one day I was finally like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm sitting here. It's kind of like Kylie. We talked about this previously on the last episode, but Kylie's husband is the one that actually pushed me to watch The Monkey after, I had been saying how I wanted to watch it. It came out. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy it. And then finally Kylie's husband's like, I want to watch it. And for him to say that, he's not a very big like horror person.
Horror fan.
Yeah. So for him to be like, hey, you need to watch it, I was like, okay, challenge accepted. I watched it and loved it. But yeah, I feel like with those movies, it is hard because you want to give it the time and respect that it deserves. But I am very excited because I love Ryan Coogler. I love Michael B. Jordan. And when I heard that they were doing a horror movie and that it was going to be vampires, I'm like, oh, okay, so that I'm going to be obsessed with this. Got it. Okay, cool. So, and the fact that he played two characters, people were like, I didn't think he could do that. I was like, were we watching the same Black Panther movie? Because when I watched him in Black Panther, I'm like, that is probably the closest movie I've ever gotten to like both of them were like the heroes. Like it wasn't just him. Like
actors who play two different people in movies, it's just incredibly fascinating.
It very much is. So I love the conversations that are being had around it and how it is kind of like pumping different things back into the genre and stuff like that. So I would be very excited. So other than Sinners, Weston, is there anything that you would like to add to your favorite thing in horror this week?
It's funny. I've been doing getting back into so much horror just because I finally have had some time off from work. So I have three things from three different medias. So whatever anybody's into, at least. Movies, Clown in a Cornfield.
Just
fucking awesome. It's a really good intro to horror. Like I would, if you're comfortable bringing your kids, this is a good like intro horror movie. Honestly, it's really great. It's a lot like Scream, where it turns a lot of like horror tropes on its head, which is cool. And I loved it. And it's really, really great. Gaming wise, there's this one that I really got excited to play called The Midnight Walk, and it's really good. It's very dark fantasy claymation style games. I'm going to be playing it soon. I'm really excited for that. And I read a book so I'm really into comic books. I read an entire series called Harrow County, which is very much like Sinners with Haints and stuff like that. It's about this witch, and she comes back, she comes back, but like a good side of her comes back and a bad side comes back to her. So it's two different people. It's really, really good. Like if you're looking for like Southern horror, very much. If you're into Sinners, you'd probably love it. It was weird because I had no idea what Haints were. If you guys don't know what that is,
I don't know what that is.
They're like it's Southern like ghosts and shit like that. And like I had saw Sinners that mentioned it. And then I was reading Harrow County, which mentioned it. And then I played a game that was literally this all happened within a day. I'm like, I had no idea what this was. And all of a sudden I heard it 4 times in like less than 2 days. But it's
I
really
love
cool.
that.
Yeah, Harrow County, it's a really, really good read. And the artwork is phenomenal in it.
I love that. So we're definitely going to put all of that down in the description down below, because I think, especially like comic book wise, that's incredible, because that is something that doesn't get talked about a lot when it comes to horror. And obviously one of our favorite movies was inspired by a graphic novel, which was 30 Days a Night. So I mean, you got to put some respect on comic books, graphic novels, you got to put it all respect on all forms of media. Okay. Let's just say that. So, but thank you, Weston, so much for coming on, for talking with us about session 9 and giving us definitely a different perspective. We really appreciate it. And as always, we appreciate you coming on and doing this, and please go check Weston out. But until next time, it's me, Cass, and
Kylie.
And we are the Horrorcraft Podcast, and we say bye and stay spooky. Bye.